5 things I want you to pay attention to around your communication. Okay, 5 things. And communication is one of those topics where everyone's talking about, like in business, like we got to communicate more as a team. We got to communicate more to our clients and our customers. And then in the family life, we got to learn how to communicate with your spouse and with your kids. And so it's just one of those like really huge topics. And I'm often asked, like, Karen, can you just kind of boil it down? Like if there was just kind of like 5 things I need to focus in on, what are they? So let me give you 5 things to just start paying attention to so that you can be a really effective communicator. Okay, so number 1, timing. So, and this list, by the way, or this is maybe, they're good kind of right across the board, but they're going to work really well, especially if you're dealing with more of like a tricky situation or a bit of a tricky topic. But the first thing is like really about timing. So pay attention if you're going to be having a, more of a difficult or a tricky conversation, choose your timing well. Make sure that when you're kind of trying to raise the topic, it's not like late at night or when you're about to, head out the door, or when somebody maybe has just gotten already some really bad news. Like the best way to really deal with your timing is when you've got time to really talk it through. And when essentially the ideal is when people are actually both calm. So you want to really be careful on when you're choosing your time to have a deeper kind of conversation. Okay, so timing is one of those things a lot of people don't even really think about, but it can actually make or break a really difficult conversation, but then actually making it actually into something that's actually very positive. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, language. Pay attention to your language. So there's lots, I can talk about this. I talk about this in my book, The 3 Chairs. I give like literally scripts and examples on actually what to say and with what not to say. But here are kind of a few quick tips is really make sure you don't use you language, but you use I. So I think, I need, I appreciate, or we is another great one, especially when we're talking about teams. We need to do, or we really appreciate. So the we language is also very positive. So I or we can work very well, and just try to not use you. You will actually come across as aggressive. I comes across and we comes across as assertive. And so pay attention to your language. Number 3, tone. Tone is a hard one, everybody, because tone is not something that it's not as easily measurable, right? Unless you're actually literally like taping somebody, you can actually watch the tone and the kind of like, in terms of the computer screen. But tone is a little bit challenging on this one, but pay attention to it. So one of the kind of quick things that I do when I kind of coach people on this is pay attention to when you're speaking. Does your tone go down or does it actually come up? If your tone comes down, it can come across as condescending. Or if the tone is more of a demand, not a conversation. So really pay attention to your tone. And if you're not sure what your tone really sounds like, ask people around you that you really trust. They can give you some kind of honest feedback saying, how am I doing with my tone? Like, does it come across great, collaborative, or does it come across like as a one-way conversation? And generally speaking, the best people to ask for that kind of feedback, you may or may not like this answer, but I'm going to give it to you, is your family. Because our families tend to be the most honest with us in terms of feedback. So ask yourself, how is my tone doing? Is my tone collaborative? Is it a conversation? Does it feel like it's an equal, or does my tone come across more arrogant or superior, or like it's a one-way conversation? It's like almost like a demand. So pay attention, everybody, to that one. That's the 3rd one. 4th one is try to avoid certain words in your communications. So things to avoid are things like always, never. You always do this. You never do this. Well, nobody really does, right? I mean, there's going to be always. I'm actually using always in this, which is kind of ironic. There's going to be exceptions to it. So even though somebody may often do something, then you can say, I often see ... versus you always do ... Do you hear the difference? So try to exchange. I often tell clients, you don't want to just kind of take a word out, but without replacing it, right? You've got to always tell people, if you don't say this, then say this actually instead. So instead of saying always, you always do this, you never do this, you can say, from my perspective or in my opinion, I often see you do this. Okay, so you're replacing it with often or rarely, but trying to really avoid always and never. Okay, so try to avoid those absolutes. And kind of part of that conversation that I think is really important is when people can really get stuck into conversations, it becomes this very black and white kind of thinking. It's a very absolute. It's like it's this or it's this. There's a lot of gray. And I encourage people to get really comfortable with gray. Gray is an awesome color because you realize that things are not so polarized. There's a lot of things that we don't understand. There's a lot of things that we don't really make a whole lot of sense. And if we can kind of like let go of these very absolute ways of thinking and really try to see that more of the common gray, it's actually pretty powerful. And you can really kind of do a lot of great movement, both with teams as well as in the family life, if we can kind of start embracing gray. And the fifth one, and this is a biggie, okay, is, and we teach this to our teams that we coach, we teach this at our home. The golden rule is this: if you bring up a problem, you have to bring up a solution with it. It's what we call the PS method. It is really important that we are, when we're communicating, that, you know, whether again it's with teams or families, that problems are going to come up all the time. They're going to come up all the time. So problems are not the problem. It's how we address and approach the problem that is the problem. So if you're raising an issue and a problem, no biggie, then you want to also make sure that you're also bringing up a potential solution. So really pay attention to when you're addressing issues or you're addressing problems. Are you also coming up with maybe one or two potential solutions? Be solution focused in your mindset. That is really energizing. So not only do these 5 things, so timing, language, tone, avoiding absolutes, embracing the gray, and focusing on problem solving, not only will this really help to generate some really great, meaningful conversation, it's going to change the whole emotional energy of your conversation. You'll find that people are more engaged, it's more interactive, they're more collaborative. If we do the other way, you'll find that people get really defensive, they get really kind of like they stonewall, and we don't want to do that. So we want to we really want to be great, effective communicators in all parts of our life. So pay attention, everyone, to those 5 things. Try to apply them, and you might be really great on maybe 3 of them, but not on the other 2. No problem. Then these are just things that we can really lean into and practice. But those are the 5 that I would say really start paying attention to first.